The job wasn't about the money, not really. For Leo, it was about completion. The thrill wasn't in the getting, but in the having. And what he wanted to have was a complete, first edition, shadowless set of the original 151 Pokémon. He was one card short. Charizard. Not just any Charizard. A Gem Mint 10. First edition, shadowless Charizard. A card so pristine it was less a piece of cardboard and more a holy relic. One existed in the private collection of Arthur Pembroke, a reclusive logistics magnate who treated his Pokémon cards with the same security severity as his company, S-Bearer Bonds. Which is how Leo found himself, dressed as an HVAC technician, suspended in a ventilation shaft above Pembroke's private museum, a climate-controlled vault hidden behind the facade of his suburban mansion. The security was, as expected, exquisite. Pressure plates on the floor, thermal motion sensors, laser tripwires. But Leo hadn't earned the nickname the completest by being impatient. He'd spent 6 months planning. He knew the guard rotations, the blind spots in the camera feeds, and, most importantly, the 10-second window when the internal sensors disarmed for a system sync, a flaw in the code known only to the installer, whom Leo had persuaded into cooperation. His watch vibrated. Showtime. He lowered himself silently onto a rafter, avoiding the floor entirely. Below him, gleaming in individual temperature-controlled cases, was the most magnificent collection of Pokémon cards in the world. But Leo's eyes were locked on the centerpiece, the Charizard, its fiery artwork seeming to pulse under the perfect lighting. The system sync began. A soft, almost inaudible click echoed in the chamber. 10 seconds. He moved like a ghost. Using a custom-built tool that emitted a precise frequency, he neutralized the adhesive on the case's pressure seal. In one smooth motion, he lifted the glass, plucked the sleeved card from its cradle, and replaced it with a perfect forgery he'd commissioned from a washed-up Disney animator in Tokyo. He sealed the case just as the system rearmed. He should have left. The job was done. The crown jewel was his. But then he saw them. Stacked neatly against the far wall were rows of unopened boxes. Not just any boxes. First edition fossil booster boxes. Jungle set. Rocket. Sealed. Pristine. A fortune in potential holographics. They were Pembroke's unopened reserves, his rainy day fund of pure nostalgia. A switch flipped in Leo's brain. The completist didn't just want the Charizard. He wanted the potential, the thrill of the pull, the chance of a duplicate Blastoise or a second Chansey. It was illogical, greedy, and utterly irresistible. He had 5 minutes until the next patrol. He worked feverishly, his technician's coveralls now serving as a sack. He filled them with box after box, his heart hammering a rhythm of pure avarice. He wasn't a thief anymore. He was a kid in a candy store, and he'd just been given the key. He managed to haul his bulging, cardboard-stuffed outfit back into the vent, just as the door hissed open for the guard's routine check. He held his breath listening to the guard's footsteps pause, then continue, completely unaware that the museum's centerpiece was a fake and its future had been pilfered. The next morning, Arthur Pembroke discovered the theft. The police were called. They saw the flawless case, the perfect forgery in place, and were baffled. Nothing was missing. Pembroke, however, knew his collection. He spotted the minute difference in the card's hue. He flew into a rage they could hear from the street. But when he calmed down enough to check his inventory, he discovered the true extent of the crime. The Charizard was a personal insult, but the boxes were a massacre. Over 200 first edition booster boxes, gone. The investigation went nowhere. There were no fingerprints, no DNA, no leads. The heist was too clean. Meanwhile, in a secure storage unit that smelled of dust and old dreams, Leo the completist stared at his haul. The Charizard was already safely encased in a bulletproof frame on his wall, the final piece of his masterpiece collection. He picked up a fossil booster box, the cellophane wrapper crinkling under his touch. He felt a jolt of pure, unadulterated joy. He ripped it open. One pack at a time, he began to tear them open. The rustle of the foil, the slide of the cards, the breathless moment before the flip. It wasn't about the value. It was about the act itself. He pulled a holographic Hitmonlee, then a Ditto, a non-holographic Mook. Hours bled into days. The floor of the unit became a sea of discarded wrappers and common cards. He was chasing the high, the elusive shadow of a second Charizard he didn't need. On the third day, bleary-eyed and hopped on cheap coffee, he opened a Team Rocket pack. He flipped past a Zubat, a Oddish, and then... there it was. A dark, menacing artwork he knew better than his own reflection. Dark Charizard. It was a different card, from a different set. It was worth a fraction of his first edition. But in that moment, to Leo, it was everything. It was another peak to conquer, another set to complete. He smiled, looking at the mountain of unopened boxes that remained. The police were looking for a master thief who'd committed the perfect crime. But they were wrong. They weren't looking for a criminal at all. They were looking for a very, very obsessive collector. And he was just getting started.